Be me, Colton, 31, roofer. Spend all day up on other people's houses, sun cooking the back of my neck, hauling bundles of shingles up a ladder until my arms feel like wet rope. Come home, eat whatever's on the plate, hit the pillow, gone in about a minute. Figured that was just what a normal marriage looked like. Married to Simone, 4 years in at the time. She coordinates volunteers for a local outfit, lines up schedules, herds people around, sends a lot of emails with exclamation points in them. We were fine. Not a fairy tale, but fine. Or, at least I thought so. Then one night she came home from seeing her friend, and the whole thing tilted sideways. Grab a coffee, this one still makes me laugh when I think about it. Let me set the scene on the marriage first so the rest lands right. On paper we worked. I brought in steady money, she had her thing with the volunteer stuff. We split the chores about even, didn't fight much. Standard married couple stuff, nothing you'd write home about. The only real friction in the whole house was the bed. And I didn't even think of it as friction back then. That's the wild part. Just thought that's how sleeping worked once you shared it with somebody. Because sharing a bed with Simone was a full contact sport. She ran cold, so the thermostat lived down near freezing, and the blanket got dragged to her side inch by inch through the night. I'd wake up half uncovered, clutching a corner of sheet, while she was wrapped up like a burrito on her side. Light sleeper too, which meant if I so much as rolled over, she'd sigh and shift and make it a whole production. And she was a scroller. Phone going at all hours, screen lighting up the ceiling, that little glow burning through my eyelids at 2 in the morning. If she couldn't sleep, somehow that turned into my problem. She'd nudge me awake to talk, or gripe that I was sleeping through her being upset. Some nights she'd get a burst of energy and want to hash out something from 3 days ago, while I was trying to catch a few hours before a dawn start. I put up with all of it for years, and never once framed it as a problem. It was just the tax you paid, I figured, part of the deal. One night still stands out from back then, before any of this started. I had a 5 a.m. start, big commercial job, needed every hour I could get. She got a second wind around midnight, and wanted to talk through something a coworker said to her that afternoon. I gave it a real shot, stayed up with it, but I was fading, and she could tell. Got the whole speech about how I never really listen, how I'd rather sleep than be there for her. Ended up on the roof the next morning, running on about 3 hours, moving slow. Nearly put my foot wrong on a wet edge. That was married life to me, and I'd stopped questioning any of it. So it starts on an ordinary evening. Nothing special about it, no anniversary, no fight brewing, nothing. I'm at the table, plate in front of me, thinking about the job I had lined up for the next morning. Simone comes in from meeting Whitney. Whitney is her friend, books trips for people at a travel agency, spends her whole day looking at beaches she never actually goes to herself. Single, always had an opinion on my marriage, the kind of friend who's real generous with advice about a life she isn't living. The two of them get together and come back full of ideas. Usually the ideas fade by morning. Some new diet, or a show I had to watch, or a room we suddenly needed to repaint. This one didn't fade. This one she'd clearly been chewing on the entire drive home. Simone sits down across from me, hands folded on the table, doing the calm, serious face. You know the face. The one she uses when she's already decided something and is about to inform me of the decision. She looks at me and goes, "I've been thinking, and I want us to sleep in separate bedrooms." I put my fork down. First thing out of my mouth is whether I snore, or if I'm kicking her at night, or hogging the blanket, something along those lines. Because those would be real reasons and I'd fix them. No argument. Nope. None of that. She says it's about independence. Says couples who share a bed lose themselves in each other over time. Says she read somewhere that needing to fall asleep next to your partner is a sign of being too dependent on them. And then, this is the part. She looks dead at me when she says, the dependent part. Let that sit for a second. I'm the guy who spends 12 hours a day on a roof in the heat, so we can make the mortgage on the very bed. She's now telling me she doesn't want to share, but somehow, in this version of events, I'm the clingy one who needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. She keeps going, rolls out boundaries and personal space and reclaiming her nights, like a little presentation she'd prepped. Every sentence sounds rehearsed, like she practiced it in the car or read it off the notes app. About halfway through, I stop hearing a conversation and start hearing an announcement. This wasn't a thing we were deciding together. It was a thing that had already been decided, and I was being read the results. She had a line ready for every direction I might go. If I got hurt, that was me being fragile. If I stayed calm, that was me not caring enough to fight for it. The setup was rigged, so anything I did proved her point, which is a neat trick when you think about it. Only thing she hadn't drawn up a card for was me just agreeing and walking off happy. Here's what really got under my skin, and I didn't even fully process it until later. She framed the whole thing like I was the one with a problem, like a husband wanting to sleep in the same room as his own wife was some unhealthy male habit she needed protecting from. The word toxic didn't come out of her mouth that first night, but it was hanging over the table the entire time. I could feel it. The way she kept talking about needing space from me, specifically, like my presence in the bed, was a thing a person had to recover from. I could tell she'd been talked into every last bit of this. Whitney's fingerprints were all over it. Picture the two of them spending the whole afternoon deciding that my boring, tired, ordinary husband behavior was secretly a red flag she'd been overlooking out of niceness. Now, most guys probably argue at this point. Fight for it. Big emotional scene. How could you say that to me? The whole routine. A younger version of me might have. But I sat there for a second and actually thought about it. Ran back over the last few years of sleep. The burrito blanket. The 2 a.m. ceiling glow. The sighing. The 3 a.m. debates. And here's the honest thing that popped into my head. I was tired. Not sad tired. Not being dramatic about it. Bone tired. The kind that builds up quiet over years until you stop even noticing it's there. So I looked at her, shrugged, and said, "Okay." You should have seen her face. She had loaded up for a whole debate. Had the counter-arguments stacked, the wounded expression on standby, probably a follow-up speech ready about how my resistance just proved her point for her. And I just went, "Okay," and picked my fork back up. She blinked at me a couple of times, said, "Okay," back to me like she hadn't heard it right. "Yeah, okay. You want separate rooms? We'll do separate rooms. The guest room's right down the hall, made up and everything." That night I grabbed my pillow and moved down the hall. Found out later that Whitney texted her something like, "So proud of you for putting yourself first. This is huge for you." Real supportive stuff. Her whole circle got the news fast. That much was obvious. The little chat she had going with her friends lit up with the applause. Somebody called it brave. Somebody else called it healthy. All of them acting like she'd escaped something. Escaped what? A guy who worked and paid the bills and fell asleep too fast, apparently. She read a couple of the messages out loud to me, proud of them, like the approval settled the matter. I didn't have a comeback, just nodded and hauled my pillow down the hall. Meanwhile, I'm carrying a pillow and a phone charger into a spare room, like a man being sent to time out in his own house. Except, here's the thing, it didn't feel like a punishment at all. Walking into that quiet little room felt kind of like checking into a hotel. Clean sheets, nobody else's stuff on the nightstand, a door I could shut all the way. Remember thinking, weird night, and then not thinking much more about it. Spent 10 minutes making the little room mine before I turned in. Put my alarm on the nightstand, plugged the phone in on my side, set the fan how I like it. Kicked the temperature back up to where a normal person can sleep. Small stuff, but it was the first time in years I'd set a room up around what I wanted instead of splitting the difference with somebody. Got into a habit of reading a few pages before lights out. Something I hadn't done since I was a kid. No phone glowing across the room. No conversation I had to stay awake for. Just quiet and a lamp. Fell asleep faster doing that than I ever did, staring at a dark ceiling waiting for my turn at the blanket. First night alone in there. I lie down. And I start noticing everything that isn't happening. Nobody's got a death grip on the blanket, dragging it over to their side inch by inch. Nobody's phone is lighting up the ceiling. The thermostat is right where I set it, not cranked to Arctic and then complained about an hour later. No elbow finding my ribs, no getting shaken awake because she's awake and has decided that means I should be too. Just quiet. Cool, dark, still, quiet. I was out cold before I even had the chance to appreciate it. Wake up the next morning and something feels off, but in a good way. And it takes me a minute to place what it is. It's my back. It doesn't hurt. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I sat up and nothing in my spine was screaming at me. No stiff neck, no dull ache across the shoulders I'd started assuming was just permanent. Stood in that little guest room, kind of stunned, if I'm honest. Went to work. And I felt like somebody had swapped me into a younger man's body overnight. Even the drive to the job site felt different that morning, less like dragging myself somewhere and more like actually starting a day. Caught myself with the radio up, tapping the wheel, not half dead at a red light for once. Little thing, but I hadn't felt it in so long it almost threw me. Didn't say a word to Simone about it. Figured it was a fluke, one good night, don't jinx the thing. But it happened again the next night, and the one after that. By the end of that first week, I was sleeping better than I had since I was a teenager, and it wasn't even close. Let me back up and explain something, because I didn't get it myself at the time. I never knew our bed was the problem. That's the trap with bad sleep. You get used to it. It creeps up so slow that it just becomes your baseline, and you quit noticing there's anything wrong at all. Genuinely believed waking up sore and foggy every single day was just what being in your 30s felt like. Chalked it up to aging, to the job, to life. Turned out it was 4 years of sharing a mattress with a woman who slept like she was fending off intruders all night long. Blanket thief, mattress hog, midnight scroller, and a light sleeper who somehow needed me to be a light sleeper right beside her. Strip all of that out, and I turn back into a functioning human being. Couple weeks in, and the guys at work start noticing. One of the crew, older guy, been doing this longer than I've been alive practically, pulls me aside on a job. Asks me straight up what's gotten into me, says I look different, moving quicker, less dragging around in the mornings, sharper on the ladder. Wants to know if I started working out or if I met somebody. I laughed and told him, no, honestly, I'm just sleeping. He didn't buy it for a second. And I get why. I sleep in a separate room from my wife now. Sounds like the opening line of a sad divorce story, not the reason a man suddenly got a spring in his step. But that's genuinely what it was. The older guy on the crew took to ribbing me about it after that, in a friendly way. Called it my secret weapon, said half the married men on the job would kill for their own room. A couple of them got quiet when it came up, the way guys do when something hits closer than they could admit out loud. One of them said his wife would never go for it, and I remember thinking, funny, mine's the one who insisted. And it kept building on itself. My energy went through the roof. Started grabbing extra shifts because for once I actually had gas left in the tank when the day ended. There was one big job around then, a steep old roof, nasty pitch, the kind of thing that used to leave me destroyed for 2 days after. Knocked it out and felt fine that same evening, went to bed normal, woke up ready to go again the next morning. The younger guys on the crew were gassed, and I was the one telling them to keep pace. More shifts meant more money, and the money stacked up quick enough that I noticed it sitting in the account. Paid off a chunk of a debt I'd been letting ride way too long, just off the overtime. Picked up a small side job on a weekend too. Patched a leaky roof for a guy down the street for cash. Old me would have turned that down flat. No way I had it in me after a work week. New me knocked it out in an afternoon and still had energy left to grill dinner after. Boss caught me on a Friday and told me I'd been doing great work lately. Told me to keep it up. Said it right in front of the crew too. That kind of thing hadn't happened in a good while. Got back to the gym on the weekends, which I hadn't touched in years, because I was always too wiped to even consider it. Dropped a few pounds without really trying, just from moving better and having the energy to move at all. Slept even better on top of the good sleep, if that makes sense. The whole thing fed itself. Everything clicked into place at once, and it all traced back to one quiet room down the hall. Boss started handing me the newer guys to keep an eye on, trusting me to run a small crew on the easier jobs. Came with a bump in pay, nothing huge, but it was the direction things hadn't moved in a long time. Fixed up a few things around the house too that I'd been putting off for years. Rehung a sagging gutter, sorted the garage, patched the fence. Turns out when you're not exhausted, the list of stuff you keep meaning to do actually gets shorter instead of longer. Started doing little things for myself again too. Cooking my own breakfast in the morning instead of grabbing garbage on the way to a site. Went out fishing one weekend with a couple of buddies I'd been flaking on for a year because I was always too tired to commit. Sat out there feeling like a person again, laughing at dumb stuff, actually present for it. One of them asked what I'd been up to, and I gave the same answer as always: sleeping. They laughed like it was a joke, and I let them, because explaining it would have taken longer than the fishing did. A neighbor of ours caught me washing the truck one weekend and said I looked 10 years younger, asked if I'd changed my diet or something. Told him the truth again, just to hear how it sounded. Said, I finally started sleeping right. He nodded slow, like that actually made sense to him. Said his knees would kill for a real night's rest. Everybody understood it except the one person who set it up. Here's the funny part, and I want you to really get this one. I was not thinking about the bedroom situation at all. It had left my head completely. Just the new normal, and the new normal was great, so why would I go poking at it? Come home from a job, we'd have dinner, talk about our days like two regular people, and then I'd head to my quiet little room and get a solid 8 hours. Far as I was concerned, we'd stumbled into a setup that worked fine for both of us. In a dumb way, I even felt a little grateful to her for floating it. Like, hey, weird as it started, this turned out to be a good call on her part. Simone did not think we'd stumbled into a setup that worked fine. See, I pieced together later what she'd actually been expecting out of all this. The separate rooms thing was a move, a little power play, a test dressed up in nice words. She'd figured a couple of nights in, maybe a week at the outside, and I'd come knocking on that door. Come back all humbled, telling her I missed her, asking sweetly if I could return to our bed where I belonged. And she had a whole scene mapped out in her head for that exact moment. Gracious about it, sure, but making me earn it. Let me stew a while. Let me really sit in what it felt like to be pushed away. Get me to admit I'd been smothering her. That was the fantasy she was running the whole time. The fantasy needed me to be miserable for it to pay off. And instead, I was out here thriving, whistling basically. Coming home tan and rested and cheerful, and completely blissfully not asking to come back. Every single day that passed without me caving must have chipped away at her a little more, because the entire plan only cashed out if I wanted back in. If I was suffering in that guest room, missing her, learning the lesson she'd set up for me to learn, and I wasn't. Best run of sleep of my adult life, about 15 feet from the room she was lying awake in every night. Noticed her going a little strange, but honestly didn't connect the dots at first. She started asking how I slept, real casual, over coffee in the morning. Sleep okay? And I'd give her the honest answer, best I've slept in years, feeling amazing, then go on about my morning. Every time I'd catch her face do a little thing, like the answer landed somewhere sore, and she was working hard not to let it show. The daytime texts picked up around then too. She'd message me in the middle of a shift, little check-ins she never used to bother with. How's your day? Thinking of you? What do you want for dinner? That kind of thing. I'd answer between hauling loads up the ladder, friendly enough, nothing cold about it. But I could feel what it really was, her trying to close a distance she'd opened herself, from the other end of it. Then the visit started. She began finding reasons to come into the guest room at night, bringing me a stack of clean laundry that easily could have waited until morning. Wanting to check the window latch, said she thought she heard it rattling in the wind. Asking if the room was too cold. Was I comfortable in here? Did I want another blanket? Was the pillow doing the job? Just hovering in the doorway with the light from the hall behind her. I was polite about all of it, said thanks, said I was good, said everything was fine in here. But I never once said the thing she was actually fishing for. Never said, I kind of miss the old room. Never said, maybe we should give sharing another shot. Because I didn't miss it, and I wasn't about to pretend I did just to make her feel better. Why would I lie about the one thing that had gone right? One night, I woke up for a second and she was just standing in the doorway. Not saying anything, not bringing laundry, just standing there in the dark looking in at me. I asked her if everything was okay, and she startled a little and said she was just getting water and walked off. The kitchen's the other direction. Didn't say anything about it in the morning, but that one stuck with me. She wasn't checking a latch anymore. She was watching a guy sleep peacefully in a room she'd sent him to as a punishment. Then she took it further, sat down on the edge of the guest bed one evening, asked me, careful about it, whether I ever thought about how we needed our own space to grow as people. Loaded question, I could hear the hope tucked underneath it. She wanted me to say no. Actually, I've been thinking we've had way too much space. Instead, I told her the space had been working out great for me, that I felt better than I had in years. She went quiet, said goodnight, and left. Heard our old bedroom door close down the hall, softer than she usually shut it. She tried a different angle after that, and I'll give her credit for effort. Went and bought all new bedding for the master, nice stuff, the fancy sheets, redid the whole room, made a point of showing it off, how cozy it looked now, how nice it'd be. Cooked a big dinner one evening too, my favorite, the whole spread. Over the food she brought up, all casual, that maybe the separate rooms had been an overcorrection. Said it like it was a brand new thought she'd just landed on, not something she'd obviously been rehearsing. Floated the idea of a trial, going back to sharing just to see how it felt. Framed it as her being generous and flexible, doing me the favor. Thanked her for dinner, said it was great, told her honestly the current setup was working for me and I'd rather not mess with a good thing. Watch that land. She pushed the food around her plate for the rest of it. The gestures ramped up from there. Started making my coffee in the morning the way I like it, having it ready before I was even up. Packed me a lunch a couple of times, left a little notes in the bag. Left the master bedroom door open at night, lamp on low, an obvious invitation with no words attached. At one point she tried to book us a weekend away. Had Whitney of all people put the whole trip together. Nice little place, one room, one bed, the not-so-subtle plan baked right in. Framed it as reconnecting, getting out of the house, doing something for us. I told her I had jobs lined up I couldn't move, which was true, and left it there. The trip that was supposed to fix everything quietly got canceled, and neither of us brought it up again. All the stuff that would have meant the world a few years back, when I was the one reaching and getting nothing. Now it was aimed at a guy who slept great down the hall and didn't need any of it, and I think that's what stung her most. Somewhere in this stretch, she started sleeping badly herself. Didn't clock it right away, she sure wasn't going to advertise it to me of all people. But the signs piled up on their own, dark circles setting in under her eyes. Short with me in the mornings, over nothing at all. Making a second cup of coffee she never used to need. Yawning through her afternoons, I heard about it from little comments she'd let slip, and from a mumble about how somebody at the volunteer place asked if she was feeling all right. Said she looked run down. Turned out the big empty bed she'd fought so hard to have all to herself wasn't the independence dream she'd painted. Just a big dark room, a lot of quiet, and nobody else in it. And this is where it gets good, because here's the actual thing chewing on her. What was keeping her up at night wasn't a bad mattress or a cold room. It was me being fine. She could handle sleeping alone, plenty of people manage it. What she absolutely could not handle was the fact that I was sleeping alone better than I'd ever slept next to her, that I'd taken the exact thing she did to make a point, to put me in my place, and turned it into the best few months of my life without any effort at all. The move backfired so completely it flipped the entire board over. She meant to make me feel pushed out and small. Instead, she accidentally handed me my life back, and I was loving every day of it, and she had to sit across the table and watch me love it. For a while she still told her circle it was going great, that the two of us were thriving with our independence. Kept the story up long after it stopped being true, because admitting it flopped meant admitting the whole idea was hers. I didn't correct anybody, wasn't my job to manage her image. Let her sell it however she needed to. I was too busy actually living the version she was only pretending to have. Word gets around a small circle though, and not everyone bought the happy story. Heard secondhand that one of her own friends said out loud what everyone was thinking, that she'd talked herself into breaking something that wasn't broke. Not Whitney, obviously, but somebody with eyes. Simone didn't take that one well either, from what I gathered. Found out she went to Whitney about the whole situation. Went looking for backup, for a friend to take her side, to agree that I was being cold, or checked out, or emotionally distant. Wanted somebody to confirm this was all my fault somehow. And Whitney, the same friend who'd cooked up this entire independence gospel and cheered her all the way on, was suddenly not having it. From what I gathered, Whitney basically told her, well, isn't this what you wanted? You said you needed your space. He gave you your space. He didn't even fight you on it. So, what exactly is the problem now? The whole support system evaporated the second Simone actually needed it to hold her up. I heard Whitney came over once during all this, and the visit was short and awkward, and Simone didn't bring her up much after that. There was a family thing around that stretch too, a get-together with some of her relatives. One of them asked, all innocent, how married life was treating us and whether we'd thought about kids. Simone laughed it off, but I could see it hit. Because how do you explain to your aunt that you moved your husband into the guest room for independence and it made him the happiest he's ever been? She changed the subject fast and stayed quiet most of the drive home. So now she's really on her own. No husband in the bed, by her own announcement, her own design. No friend in her corner backing the play anymore. Just her, an empty room, and the slow, grinding realization that this had gone about as wrong as a thing could go. The mask started slipping after that point. She stopped bringing up independence entirely. The boundaries speeches dried right up. That whole vocabulary she'd been so fluent in a few weeks back just vanished, like she'd never known the words. What replaced it was a run of pointed little comments. How the house felt empty lately, how she barely saw me anymore, even though I was right there across the table every single evening. How, maybe looking back, we'd taken the separation thing a little too far. Mostly I just listened and nodded and didn't grab at any of the bait. Want to be clear about one thing, because I know how this can sound from the outside. I was not being cruel about any of it. Wasn't giving her the cold shoulder, wasn't playing games back, wasn't punishing her for anything. I was pleasant. Ate dinner with her, asked about her day, and actually listened to the answer, did the dishes, handled my half of the house, all of it. Just wasn't going to raise my hand and volunteer to go back to sleeping badly so she could feel like she'd won something she never should have been playing for. There's a real difference between being mean and simply being done trying to fix a problem that was never mine to begin with. She built this thing. I moved into it, and it turned out I liked how it was built. Then came the night she stopped hinting altogether. I was already in bed, half asleep, when she came in. No laundry this time, no window excuse, nothing to hide behind. She sat down on the edge of the bed, and she just said it. Asked me, flat out, to come back to our bedroom. Not as a boundaries conversation, not as a system we'd adjust. Told me straight that she couldn't sleep, that she hated the empty room, that the whole thing felt wrong now, and she wanted to undo it and go back. And then she said the part I think she'd been circling for weeks and finally couldn't hold in. She said I seemed different, calmer, steadier. Said it almost like an accusation and a plea at the same time, like she couldn't work out whether she was complimenting me or blaming me. Then, quieter, looking down at the floor, she asked me if I was better off without her. The room went dead silent after she said it. She wasn't doing the calm, serious face anymore. None of the rehearsed stuff. No vocabulary, no cards to play. Just sat there on the edge of the bed with her hands in her lap, looking small. I let the quiet sit for a second because I owed the question a real answer, not a reflex. Part of me still felt for her. Sitting there like that, I won't pretend otherwise. But feeling for someone and setting yourself back on fire to keep them warm are two different things. I'd already learned which one of those I'd been doing for years. Now. Here's the moment. A few months earlier, that question would have absolutely flattened me. I'd have said, no, of course not. Come here. Let's fix this. I'll do anything. I'll move back tonight. Because I loved her, and I could never stand to see her that low. But I'd had a whole lot of quiet nights to lie there and think it over. And the honest answer, the one I'd been ducking, was yeah. I kind of was better, not out of spite, not to score a point off her. Just as a plain, simple fact of how my life had actually gone. Every good thing that landed on me over those months, the deep sleep, the energy, the extra money, the gym, the fishing, the honest-to-God good mood, every bit of it showed up the day she moved me down that hall. She'd handed me the single best thing to happen to me in years, and she'd handed it over as a punishment. Now she wanted to take it back, purely because it hadn't hurt me the way she'd needed it to. So, I didn't lie to her. Didn't yell either, didn't throw the independent speeches back in her face, even though it would have been the easiest thing in the world to do. Could have recited every phrase, lose ourselves, boundaries, too dependent, the whole script, and watched each one land. Didn't. Just told her the truth as plainly as I could get it out. Told her she'd actually been right all along. Independence really was a good thing. It suited me. Suited me a whole lot more than either of us saw coming. And I was going to keep it. She didn't understand at first. Asked me what I meant by that. I meant I was leaving, not storming out, not a screaming match, no big dramatic exit for the neighbors. Got up, pulled my bag down from the closet, and started putting my stuff into it. Calm, folding shirts, zipping the side pocket, the whole ordinary motion of it. Didn't take much, honestly. I travel light. Work clothes, a couple of good shirts, the fan off the nightstand, my charger. She stood there watching me pack the same room she used to stand in the doorway of at night. Kept offering things. We'll get counseling, we'll take a trip, we'll do whatever you want. Every offer was about keeping me, and not one of them was about the 4 years before, when keeping me easy would have just meant leaving the blanket alone. She kept saying, wait, we can share the room again. We'll go right back to how it was. Please, just come back to bed. And that right there was the whole thing. I didn't want to go back to how it was. How it was got me a bad back, dead eyes, foggy mornings, and a wife who'd decided that wanting to sleep beside her made me a problem she had to manage. How it was nearly had me convinced that feeling half dead all the time was just regular life. Hard pass. What she wanted back was the version of me that would beg, the one who'd fold, who'd apologize for taking up space, who'd trade his good sleep for a little of her approval. That guy was gone, slept himself better, and packed a bag, apparently. Told her she could have the whole house to herself now, all the space she could ever want, every last room of it. The independence she'd been chasing so hard, finally, completely, 100% hers. Just not the way she'd pictured it that afternoon riding home with Whitney. Grabbed the bag, walked out to the truck. Cool night, real quiet. And honestly, it felt a lot like that very first night in the guest room, that same clean, calm nothing. Last thing I saw pulling out was her standing in the doorway, arms crossed against the cold, not chasing after me, just watching the truck go. Same doorway she used to stand in at night looking at me sleep. Drove off. And I slept great that night too, on a buddy's couch of all places, springs poking me and everything. Because it was never about the mattress, never about the bed at all. Little while after I left, a mutual friend of ours mentioned she was still having a rough go of it, still not sleeping, still rattling around that quiet house she'd wanted so badly. Telling anyone who'd listen that she didn't understand how it all fell apart, that she'd only wanted a little space. Me, I'd already found a small place of my own by then, my own room, my own thermostat, nobody's phone burning the ceiling at 2 in the morning. Best I'd slept in my life, and it stuck. Slept just as good in the new place as I had on the couch and in the guest room, because the common thread was never the furniture. Ran into Whitney once at a store a while later, of all people. She got real interested in a shelf the second she spotted me, pretended not to see me at all, which told me everything about how that friendship handled the fallout. Didn't bother saying hi, wasn't worth the trouble, just grabbed what I came for and left. Kept the extra shifts, kept the gym, kept the fishing, kept all of it. We sorted the split without much of a fight in the end. No dragging it out, no war over the furniture. She kept the house, the one she'd wanted all to herself anyway. So in a way she finally got the exact thing she'd been building toward. Mornings at the new place are the thing I notice most. Wake up before the alarm, back fine, head clear, sun coming through a window in a room that's just mine. Make my coffee, no notes in a lunch bag, no one keeping score, no distance to close from either end. Quiet, but the good kind. The kind I'd been missing so long I forgot it existed. Anyway, she got exactly what she asked for in the end. First it was separate bedrooms, then it was separate houses. Independence, achieved, 100%, no notes. Sleep tight,